The video that you're about to watch was designed to be watched as a small group or as a ministry. And so if you want all 3 episodes, discussion questions, and more, just click the link in the description of this video. All that can be in your inbox in 30 seconds.
We shouldn't expect to receive anything from him, not unless we have pure faith. Am I understanding God right on this? Is that really how he reacts to our doubts?
Have you ever been at church and thought, look at all these people. They seem 100% convinced that Christianity is true. I mean, don't they have any questions about all this? Have you ever thought that? Because I know I have. You see, in church, we tend to talk about faith, and I think that makes sense. Christians want to be faithful to God, and so we talk about how to have faith. We preach sermons about people in the Bible who had great faith, and we should, because faith in Jesus is a good thing. It can save your soul. And doubt seems to be bad for people's relationships with God. And so we don't really talk about when we lose confidence in Christianity. And because of that, we talk even less about what you should do if you have doubts. You see, lots of people say that church feels like an unsafe place to express those really difficult questions about Christianity. I don't know about you, but I've had some doubts in my life, and to deal with them, this is the strategy that I used. I took my doubts and I shoved them way down deep on the inside, and I hoped that they didn't ever pop up again. Thanks for watching. I'm just kidding. We can't leave this conversation there. That would be nuts. And yet, that's exactly where so many people leave this conversation. Our big strategy for dealing with doubt is to just never have doubts. But when researchers ask, most Christians will say that their journey of following Jesus has included some kind of doubt. A time when they ask the really big questions. Does God exist? Did Jesus really rise from the dead? Is the Bible God's word? You know, questions like, should I still be a Christian? And so even if people don't express their doubt, we know that people have doubts because we see celebrities and Christian leaders and sometimes our own friends stop following Jesus. So I'm going to suggest that avoiding the conversation isn't actually very helpful, especially for those who are doubting. I think we should be more willing to acknowledge doubt in church because Christians wrestle with doubt. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Over the course of 3 videos, we're going to discuss questions like, is God mad that I'm doubting? And why am I doubting? And how do I overcome doubt? We're going to take a real look at those questions because I believe when we're brave and adventurous about seeking the truth, even when it comes to uncomfortable questions, then we're more likely to discover the truth, and that can strengthen our faith in big ways. So let's do this. I did put on my glasses just to say that.
When I was a teenager, I borrowed my parents' car. At the time, it was a 1990 Pontiac Grand Am. It was already old then, and now it just looks ancient. And so I was driving down the highway during stop and go rush hour traffic, windows down, music playing, and I guess you could make an argument that I wasn't paying enough attention because when the car in front of me stopped, I didn't. It was a terrifying moment when a real adult got out of the car in front of me to see if there was any damage. There wasn't on his car, thank goodness, but there was a nice little dent on our car. And then I had this horrifying thought, how is mom going to react when she finds out? So in an era before cell phones, I was happy not to tell my mom right away. I was going to delay that conversation as long as possible because I was scared of how my mom was going to react. And honestly, I think we can feel the same way when it comes to God finding out about our doubt. How is he going to react when he finds out we're not sure he's really there, or if the Bible is worth believing, or if we want to follow Jesus? Is he going to be angry, disappointed? Are we going to be punished? There are a few verses in the Bible that seem to talk about doubt in negative terms. I'm going to read those verses to you, but when I do, I'm going to read them with the negative tone that I hear in my head. So just be ready for that. James 1 verses 6-8 says, "But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all that they do." Okay. Here's another. Hebrews 11:6 says, "And without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him." When I've had doubts about Christianity, I wanted to overcome them. If Christianity is true, then I want to know it's true. But these verses give me the impression that if we have doubts, then we can't please God, and we shouldn't expect to receive anything from him, not unless we have pure faith. If our doubts really do make God withdraw from us, then it seems like they make us hopelessly lost. These verses seem to enforce the rejection and shame that we fear when we have doubts. I'm not sure church could ever be a safe place to express doubt if it's not even really safe to express them to God. Am I understanding God right on this? Is that really how he reacts to our doubts?
When you dig around in the Gospels and see how Jesus responds to doubt, and more specifically how he responds to doubters, it's actually really surprising. Let me show you why I say that. In Mark chapter 9, Jesus is approached by a father whose son is demon-possessed, and he asks Jesus to heal his son. And Jesus says, "Everything is possible for the one who believes." The father says, "I believe, but help me with my unbelief." And then what does Jesus say? Does he say, "Okay, go away and come back and ask again when you have no unbelief"? No, that's not what Jesus does. Jesus heals the man's son. I mean, just think about that for a second. What that means is that Jesus is willing to give good gifts, even supernatural gifts, to those who are doubting. In Matthew chapter 28, after Jesus had risen from the dead and his disciples had seen him alive, it says, when they saw him, they worshiped him, but some doubted. And how does Jesus respond? I mean, he's about to ascend into heaven. And so he might think, if they don't get it now, are they ever going to get it? Instead, Jesus assures them that all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me, and he goes ahead and empowers them to take his message and mission out into the world so that all people can follow Jesus. I mean, can you believe that? Jesus is willing to invite even doubters to build his kingdom alongside him. And finally, and definitely most famously, Thomas encounters Jesus after he's risen from the dead. Oh, doubting Thomas. He missed an earlier appearance of Jesus and declared to his friends that he would not believe unless he put his fingers in Jesus' wounds and his hand in his side. When Thomas actually encounters Jesus a week later, Jesus invites Thomas to put his hands in his wounds. It's almost as if Jesus is saying, Thomas, if this is what you need to believe, I'm willing to give it. I'm willing to bleed and bleed again for your sake. Aren't those stories amazing? Honestly, when I hear them all back to back like that, it blows my mind because Jesus is shockingly gracious to those who are doubting. When we take everything that we've learned and we put it all together in one sentence, we can say this: Jesus gives good gifts to doubters, sacrifices for them, and invites them to build his kingdom with him. So honestly, I want to finish this video right here. Let's just leave it on an incredible high note. I don't want to revisit those tough passages on doubt. I want to say, look at Jesus. He's got tons of grace. And just don't pay too much attention to those verses that talk about doubt negatively. Now, obviously, that doesn't seem to be completely honest in dealing with everything the Bible says about doubt. So, there's one more thing we need to talk about.
What I want to hear from you is what you remember about that time I banged up our car a little bit.
I think at that time, you were driving the car that we affectionately call Rusty Blue.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I remember you coming home and saying you'd had an accident with the car. And you said, well, I drove into a guy and I punched a hole in the license plate. And I said, who cares? I mean, his vehicle is fine. So if you're fine and his vehicle is fine, Rusty Blue isn't an issue.
I just remember you being not very surprised and not very upset. And both of those things were surprising to me.
Well, I mean, this is the car you learned to drive on. I think Amanda had an accident with that car backing into a post before you.
Right. So it sounds like you weren't upset because you didn't care that much about the car.
True.
And you weren't that surprised because you knew we were all drivers and this was possible.
Yeah. I did it with Grandpa's car.
Yeah.
And his insurance went up and I had to pay the increase in his insurance.
I just want to clarify for the record that you did the same thing.
My mom responded to me banging up the car with a lot more understanding than I expected. And did you notice why she responded that way? She knew it could and probably would happen. I don't know how I feel about that. But did you also notice that she wasn't like, you hit a car? That's so great. I'm so proud of you. Let's go out and celebrate. Obviously, hitting cars with other cars, it's not good for the cars, for people, for insurance rates, okay? So there's a tension there. And I think God has the same kind of tension when it comes to our doubt. Here's the tension. When we're doubting, God isn't surprised. He knows all about us and he cares like a good father. But he also isn't celebrating your doubt because that's not how your relationship with him was meant to be. And the tough passages we read in the Bible reflect that tension. I can tell you from personal experience that when you are doubting, it does feel like you're a wave being tossed in the ocean, and it's a terrible feeling. It's hard to feel God's unconditional love when you aren't sure he's even there. And so when we're doubting, it's tempting to withdraw from God and Christians and church, but we have to remember what the Apostle Paul wrote in his letter to the Colossians, that Jesus is the visible image of the invisible God. And so Jesus' amazing grace to doubters perfectly reflects the heart of God. And he's assuring you, if you're doubting, don't run from me, run to me. I want to show you the love and grace I have for you.